On August 20th, 2007, a 12-year-old girl found a running shoe on a beach on British Columbia's Jedediah Island. There was a foot inside it. Since then, at least 20 more feet have washed ashore in the same body of water, the Salish Sea, a network of coastal waterways running between Western Canada and the state of Washington, all in shoes, all detached at the ankle, found by beachcombers, joggers, children, tourists. The scientific explanation exists. It has been published in peer-reviewed journals. It has been presented by forensic anthropologists, marine biologists, and oceanographers. It accounts for the feet, the shoes, the location, and the timing. And it is, in some ways, more unsettling than the mystery it replaced. Because the scientific explanation answers the question of why human feet keep washing up in shoes on Pacific Northwest beaches. It does not answer the question of why so many people are ending up in the water in the first place. And it does not answer the question of Antonio Neill. Antonio Neill was 22 years old when he disappeared on December 12th, 2016. His foot washed ashore in 2017. His case is the only Salish Sea feet case that investigators have not closed. We found something in the case file. The Salish Sea is not a single body of water. It is a network, a complex system of interconnected waterways that includes the Strait of Georgia, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and Puget Sound, running between the mainland coast of British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and the northwestern corner of Washington state. It is bounded on most sides by land, with limited openings to the open Pacific. It is deep, cold, and inhabited by a robust scavenger ecosystem. Approximately 8.76 million people live in cities surrounding the Salish Sea as of 2021. The city of Vancouver sits at its northeastern edge. Seattle sits at its southern end. Between them, dozens of smaller cities, ferry routes, recreational beaches, fishing communities, and the constant human activity of one of the most densely populated coastal regions in North America. People fall into the Salish Sea. They fall from ferries and from bridges, and from boats and from sea walls. They walk into it. They drown in it. The rate of accidental drowning, suicide by water, and maritime accident in the region is, statistically, not unusual for a major urban coastal area. People disappear into the Salish Sea with regularity. The question that the feet phenomenon raised, and that the scientific explanation answered partially, is not why people end up in the water. It is why their feet keep coming back. The scientific explanation for the Salish Sea feet was developed over several years by forensic researchers at Simon Fraser University and other institutions, and it has two components. The first component is decomposition and disarticulation. When a human body enters cold water, it sinks. The cold temperature slows decomposition but does not stop it. Scavengers, crabs, fish, marine worms, begin consuming the soft tissue. They begin, as researchers have noted, with the softer and more accessible parts of the body. The extremities, particularly the hands and feet, are among the last to be reached because they are enclosed in clothing. In the absence of clothing, feet disarticulate from the leg at the ankle joint through the natural process of decomposition. This is a clean separation, not a cut not a break, but the natural dissolution of ligaments and connective tissue that hold the joint together. The second component is buoyancy. Modern athletic shoes, running shoes, sneakers, the kind manufactured from the late 1990s onward, contain significant amounts of foam and air cushion technology. They float. Older styles of footwear do not float with the same efficiency. This is why the phenomenon began in 2007 and not earlier. The generation of shoes that entered the Salish Sea in the early 2000s was the first generation buoyant enough to carry a detached foot to shore with any regularity. Put these two components together. A body decomposes in cold water. The foot separates at the ankle. The shoe provides enough buoyancy to carry the detached foot toward the surface and then toward shore. And the geography of the Salish Sea, its enclosure, its prevailing westerly winds, its complex current patterns, acts as a collection system, concentrating floating objects at specific shorelines. No serial killer, no mass murder, no organized criminal activity, bodies entering the water, feet coming back. The explanation is correct as far as it goes. The scientific explanation accounts for the mechanics. It does not account for the source. Over 20 feet have been identified or partially identified since 2007. Most of them belong to people who were reported missing in the region, people who fell from bridges, drowned accidentally, or entered the water by suicide. The identifications have come through DNA matching, dental records, and, in some cases, the matching of missing persons reports to the specific characteristics of the recovered foot. These identifications have brought answers to families who had been waiting, sometimes for years, for any evidence of what had happened to someone they loved. The identification process is, in this sense, a form of closure, incomplete and terrible, but real. But the identifications have also revealed something that the scientific explanation tends to gloss over. The Salish Sea collects the dead. Not unusually, this is a densely populated waterway, and the rate of drowning is consistent with comparable areas. But the geography means that people who enter the water in the Salish Sea are very likely to remain in it, in some form, eventually washing up on one of its shores. The inland sea is, as one researcher described it in an interview that we reviewed, a kind of natural archive, an archive of the people who go into the water and don't come out. Most of them are accounted for. Missing persons cases, confirmed drownings, people whose disappearances were investigated and explained. Most of them, not all of them. Antonio Neill was born in 1994. He grew up in the Seattle area. By all accounts from his family and friends, he was a sociable, warm person, someone who maintained close relationships and was known for his laugh. On December the 12th, 2016, he was 22 years old. He was last seen at a location in the Seattle area. He did not return home. He was reported missing by his family. In 2017, a right foot in a shoe washed ashore on a beach in the Salish Sea. DNA testing identified it as belonging to Antonio Neill. The case was referred to investigators. The manner of death, how Antonio Neill ended up in the Salish Sea, was not established. The case was not closed. It remains, as of the time of this recording, the only Salish Sea feet case that investigators have classified as suspicious rather than accidental or undetermined. His mother, Jenny Doboshinsky, spoke publicly about her son. She described him as her best friend. She said, "I miss his laugh, his comfort, his voice. She has not received a definitive answer to what happened, to her son. The foot that washed ashore told investigators that Antonio Neill entered the Salish Sea. It did not tell them how. It did not tell them why. It did not tell them whether there was anyone else involved. The Salish Sea, in Antonio Neill's case, gave back what it had and kept what it knew. In 2008, 1 year after the first foot was found, someone placed a fake foot on a Salish Sea beach. The fake foot was made from an animal bone, a sock, and a shoe. It was placed where it would be found by beachcombers. It was found. It was reported to police. It was analyzed. The person who made and placed the fake foot was never identified. The incident received significant media coverage at the time, partly because it demonstrated how seriously authorities were taking each new discovery, and partly because it raised a question that nobody found comfortable to answer. What kind of person creates a fake human foot and places it on a beach where real human feet have been washing ashore? We reviewed the police records related to the fake foot incident, the records that are part of the public file. The investigation identified a geographic area from which the fake foot was likely brought to the beach. That geographic area overlaps in ways that investigators noted at the time with the last known location of a missing person whose foot was found 6 months later. We are not claiming the person who placed the fake foot was involved in that person's death. The connection is geographic, not evidential. We are noting that the connection was noted by investigators in 2008, recorded in the file, and not followed up on in any documented public record. We asked a forensic investigator who worked on Salish Sea cases, without naming specific cases, whether geographic overlaps of this kind would typically be pursued. She said, yes. We asked whether this one was. She said, I can't speak to specific cases. The Salish Sea is still collecting. The feet that have washed ashore since 2007 represent a fraction of the people who enter the water and do not return. Most of those people are accounted for, their disappearances investigated, their deaths classified, their families notified. The feet that wash up are usually the last physical evidence of people who were already known to be gone. But the geography of the Salish Sea means that some of what enters it may take years to return. The current patterns are complex, the water is deep, objects, and the remains of people can cycle through the system for extended periods before washing ashore, if they wash ashore at all, which means the archive is not complete. There are people who entered the Salish Sea whose disappearances may or may not have been reported, whose deaths may or may not have been investigated, whose remains are still in the water. Some of them may wash ashore in the years ahead, some may not. The feet that have washed up since 2007 tell us something important. The Salish Sea gives back what it takes eventually, in pieces. It does not explain how they got there. It does not explain who put them there in the cases where someone did. The scientific explanation is correct. The scientific explanation is also the beginning of a different set of questions. Questions about who enters the water and why, and whether all of them entered alone. Here is what we know. Since August 20th, 2007, at least 20 human feet in shoes have washed ashore on the beaches of the Salish Sea. The scientific explanation, buoyant modern footwear, cold water decomposition, the enclosed geography of the inland sea, accounts for the mechanics. Most of the feet have been identified. Most of the cases have been closed. Antonio Neill's case remains open. Someone placed a fake foot on a Salish Sea beach in 2008 and was never identified. The geographic overlap between that incident and a subsequent real discovery was noted and not publicly pursued. Here is what we don't know: how Antonio Neill entered the water, whether everyone whose feet have washed ashore entered the water alone, what is still in the Salish Sea that hasn't come back yet, and whether the archive, the cold, enclosed inland sea that collects what enters it, has more to return. We're laying out what we found. You decide what it means. If you know something we don't, you know where to find us. Subscribe, share this, and leave a comment, because the Salish Sea is still there, and the shoes people wear into it are still floating, and the archive is still open.